If you've been posting consistently on LinkedIn for 6 months and you're still invisible to the people who would actually buy from you, the problem isn't the algorithm. You're doing exactly what everyone tells you to do. You show up 2 or 3 times a week. You've got a rhythm going, you comment on other people's posts, you share the occasional article, and you keep the streak alive. The same 15 people like everything you post, but none of them are prospects. I spent a lot of time going through 3,000 LinkedIn posts from more than 100 B2B SaaS founders, comparing the 5 who actually build real audiences against the rest of the pack. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what separates them, and it has almost nothing to do with how often they post. The 5 founders at the top of this dataset, people like Alina Vandenbergen, Ren Fishkin, and Piep Laaje, post about 15 times a month. And the 100 average founders in the group post about twice. That's the number everyone fixates on when they look at this data. Frequency. Post more, win more. I thought that too, until I looked at what was actually inside each post. And that's where the real gap showed up. Somewhere almost nobody was looking. I'm Frank Hussman. I've worked with over 40 B2B SaaS founders on go-to-market, and the pattern I'm about to walk you through isn't the one-off from this dataset. It's the same thing I see almost every time I pull up a founder's LinkedIn history for the first time. Almost every founder starts with the same assumption. If LinkedIn isn't working, the fix is frequency. Post more, show up more consistently, and eventually the algorithm notices you and starts rewarding you with reach. So founders build a content calendar. They batch ideas on a Sunday and they set a target for 3 posts a week, and they grind through it for a few months. And some of them even hit the frequency the top founders in this dataset hit. But it still doesn't work, which is confusing because frequency was supposed to be the lever. Of the average founder's LinkedIn output, 51% was repost to reshared content. Someone else's article, someone else's take, sometimes just a great point comment stapled onto another person's post. But of the top 5 founders, only 4% was reposted, and 96% of what they published was theirs. Their own words, their own disagreement with something everyone else in the space was saying. And when I broke down content type instead of content source, the gap widened again. Only 8.1 of the average founders' posts were genuine thought leadership, an actual point of view about the market, the buyer, or the product category. For the top 5, that number was 42.4%, 5 times higher. So the real problem was never frequency. 2 founders can post the exact same number of times per week. One of them is filling that feed with reactions to other people's thinking, and the other is putting their own thinking into the world over and over until the market starts to associate that specific point of view with that specific name. Frequency is the wrapper, but what's inside the wrapper is what the buyer actually remembers. Put 2 posts side by side and it's obvious once you know what to look for. Great breakdown from an industry publication on why buyer intent data matters. It's a repost with a caption. It took 90 seconds to write and it tells the reader nothing about what the founder actually believes. I turned off our LinkedIn ads for 2 weeks last quarter just to see what would happen to pipeline, and it didn't drop. That told me something about what those ads were actually doing. It's a specific claim backed by something the founder did that someone else would have to disagree with to argue against. One of those builds a reputation. The other just proves you have a LinkedIn account. So once you see this, you start noticing it everywhere in the dataset. The follower count told the same story from a different angle. The top 5 founders averaged almost 80,000 followers against 5,000 for the average founders in the group. That's not a 15 times gap matching their posting frequency. It's close to 16 times on top of a much higher percentage of original thinking in every single post. The audience isn't just bigger because they showed up more, it's bigger because there was something in that feed worth following in the first place. I've watched this exact split happen inside clients' accounts, not just in a research dataset. A client I work with, Matthijs at Units, a community software company, started putting short video content on LinkedIn based on his own read of the market, not repost industry commentary. And within a month, he wasn't just getting likes, he was invited to participate in 2 expert panels, both times because someone in the audience had seen this video and already placed him as the person to bring into the room. Nobody invites you to a panel because you reshared a good McKinsey stat. They invite you because you said something they hadn't heard framed that way before. And that's the part most founders miss when they look at a dataset like this and only see the frequency gap. Video content followed the same pattern too. 24% of the top 5's output was video versus 14% of the average founder. Not because video is magic, because video is a harder place to hide behind a repost. You can reshare an article in 4 seconds, but you can't reshare a 30-second video of yourself explaining what you actually believe about your market. It forces originality, and originality is the thing that was missing the whole time. There's a framework I use with clients to explain this, and once you hear it, you can't unsee it in your own feed. Opinion density is the strength of your point of view multiplied by how often you repeat it. Not repeat the same sentence, repeat the same underlying belief from different angles across different posts until the market can predict what you'd say about a new situation before you've said it. A weak, inconsistent point of view reads as noise. But a strong point of view, said once, is sharp but forgettable. The market sees it, nods, and moves on. It's only when a strong point of view gets repeated, post after post, month after month, that it turns into something the market actually trusts. That's what the top 5 founders were doing without necessarily naming it. And it's the exact thing that the 51% repost rate was quietly preventing everyone else from building. Laid out as a grid, and the dataset makes sense in one look. Weak point of view, Posted inconsistently is just noise and nobody remembers it, including the founder who wrote it. A weak point of view posted consistently gets you recognized but replaceable. People know your name, but they say the same about 3 other people in your category. Strong point of view posted inconsistently is sharp but forgettable. A good post buried with nothing behind it a month later. But a strong point of view repeated consistently is the only quadrant that produces market authority. That's the quadrant that the top 5 founders were sitting in, and it's not a talent gap. It's a decision about what goes into the feed in the first place. Their own read on the market and not someone else's. The repost pattern has a real cost, and most founders stuck in it don't realize it. Buyers in B2B SaaS spend the better part of 9 months in the research phase before a sales rep ever gets involved. They are reading, comparing, forming opinions about who the serious players are in a category. That's the exact window where a founder's LinkedIn feed either builds a reputation or doesn't. If 51% of what shows up in that window is someone else's thinking with your face next to it, you haven't given that buyer anything to remember you by. You've just proven you read the same articles that they did. And this is why founders in this position often conclude, LinkedIn doesn't work for me after 8 or 10 weeks of posting. They're not wrong that nothing happened, they're wrong about why. It's not that the platform failed to reward consistency, it's that consistency was never the missing ingredient. A repeated, own point of view was. And when that's missing, more frequency doesn't fix it, it just produces more noise, faster. The founders who eventually get invited into rooms or get tagged in DMs, get referred to by name in a deal they didn't even know was happening, that's not luck and it's not raw output. It's a market that has absorbed the same specific belief enough times that it now belongs to that founder. That's what shortens the sales cycle before the first call even happens, because the prospect isn't being introduced to your position, they already have it filed away. So if you're looking at your own LinkedIn output and wondering why it isn't building anything, don't start by asking whether you're posting enough. Start by asking what percentage of what you've posted this quarter was actually your own belief about your market, stated in your own words, not someone else's take with your commentary bolted on it. You don't have a consistency problem, you have an ownership problem. The founders who win aren't the ones posting the most, they're the only original voice in their own feed. In the next video I'm going to break down what that 42% of thought leadership content actually looks like in practice. If this changed how you think about your own LinkedIn feed, please subscribe. I'll keep unpacking what actually separates founders who build real authority from the ones grinding through a content calendar that isn't working. I'm Frank Husband, and I'll see you in the next video.